Assalamu alaikum, young people, ladies and gentlemen, and good afternoon. My name is Simi Kamal from Hisar Foundation, and today I'm going to be in conversation with a good friend and colleague, Dr. Abid Qayyum Suleri. It's my pleasure and honor to talk to him today. Dr. Suleri has a PhD in food security and he has been heading Pakistan's premier policy research think tank, Sustainable Development Policy Institute, better known as SDPI, since 2007. He is a member of many governmental and non-governmental high-powered forums and bodies, including Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, Pakistan Climate Change Commission, the think tank of Ministry of National Food Security and Research. He also convenes the working group on food security under the Strategic Policy Planning Cell, where we are colleagues. He's on the advisory board of CAREC, which is the Central Asia Regional Economic Cooperation. It's also a think tank network. He co-chairs the Climate Action Network South Asia, and he served on 3 different judicial commissions formed by Supreme Court of Pakistan, Islamabad High Court, and Lahore High Court on environmental issues. Dr. Suleri has represented Pakistan at the World Summit on Sustainable Development and various conferences on climate change at the World Trade Organization and many others. He is an acclaimed writer, researcher, and analytical person. His analytical publications are really well known, and he also contributes to the print and electronic media. And I read almost all that he writes. I'm always delighted to see an article of his. So, Dr. Suleri, thank you very much for being with us. Now, many Pakistanis are quite puzzled because we are told that Pakistan has already attained Sustainable Development Goal 13, which is on climate action, a whole decade earlier. This is because a recent report which has come out from UNDP shows a big green block against Pakistan on SDG 13, which is the one which has to do with climate action, when all the others are red. So this has led to a lot of celebration in Pakistan. And many of us really want to know, what does this mean? What does this big green block mean? Does it mean that we don't have that much more to do? Or do we have much more to do? I'll start with that, and then I have a number of other questions for you.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm very thankful to the organizers for providing me this opportunity to interact with the youngsters. I believe that most of the viewers today, they are students and youngsters who hold our future. Well, when we are talking of SDGs, first thing that we need to keep in our mind is voluntary national review. It is a voluntary report that government of Pakistan, submitted to SDG Secretariat last year against 17 goals. We chose to report on 8 goals, and SDG 13 is one of them. Rest of the goals, we couldn't report on them. Either we never had the sufficient data to report on it, or 1 or 2 goals, perhaps those were not relevant to us. But because VNR is a voluntary in nature, so we voluntarily reported on those 8 goals, and SDG 13 is one of them. Now, to me, the color green, it means that we are on track, and the red means that we have to do a lot more in order to achieve those goals. Of course, if the government or if the media, if they portray that green means that we have already achieved this goal, I'm not really privy of this fact. But to me, when reporting under UNFCCC, the green always mean that the work is on track. Orange mean that work is on track, but you have to do more. It's just like the traffic lights, green, amber, and red. So red means that we need to really work hard in order to achieve it. Now, one of the reasons perhaps we are in green in SDG 13, if you look at the 5 indicators along which we have to report, so at least in theory, if not in practice, and to some extent in theory and practice, out of those 5, at least there are 2.5 or 3 where government of Pakistan's work, actually it can be acclaimed that they're doing certain things in right direction, in right manner. One of them is disaster risk reduction, so NDMA, and we observed that whether it is a natural calamity, whether it is locust, whether it is Karachi sewerage problem, whatever it is, we have to have this one window organization and NDMA that we can resort on, and NDMA, because of its resourcefulness and because of its connectedness to the power centers, it delivers. So NDMA, I think that is one of the reasons, and it justifies your indicator number one, which is strengthening resilience and adaptation capacities to climate-related disasters. Then, if we look at the goal number three, which is about building knowledge and capacity. So again, when I compare MDGs with SDGs, one of the major difference that I find that Millennium Development Goals, those were considered and perceived as a donor-driven agenda, and it was perceived that government would have to work on it as long as the funding is there. Apart from Islamabad, very few people they knew of it, and there was no political ownership of it. Now, SDGs, we must give this credit and take this credit as a nation that the mere fact that we are holding this webinar today with youngsters, that there is an awareness about SDGs, about parliamentarians, they are talking about it. Our planning commission, it has a focal center for it in our provinces. We have PND, planning and development departments as focal points. And even in some districts, Deputy Commissioner is the head of district SDG implementation committee. Now, depending upon the proactiveness of Deputy Commissioner, you would find that some of the districts, they have quite active those SDG cells, others they don't have, but there's work on in it. And the third is about the whole afforestation campaign. So I think these are the two or three things which make us believe and which make SDG Secretariat believe that Pakistan is on track on SDG 13, while rest of them, Pakistan has to do a lot more work. So that is my personal reading of these color coding.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Saab. SDG 13, whereas in general it takes about taking urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts, it has a number of targets attached to it. So I'm going to ask you a few questions in your view, where you think we are. 13.1 is about strengthening resilience and adaptive capacity to hazards and natural disasters in the country. I think you've answered that already. You've said we have NDMA and we are on track. Now, also in terms of integrating climate measures into national policies, strategies, and planning, you think we are on good track on that? And if you could share some examples.
Well, as far as policies are concerned, and as far as the institutional arrangement is concerned, I think there is no dearth of policies and there is no dearth of institution. Perhaps where the missing link is that's implementing those policies in a holistic manner. Now, to begin with, in 2018, Prime Minister of Pakistan initiated a clean and green Pakistan initiative. Then in November last year, we had this Clean and Green Index, where we said that the cities, those would be ranked against their cleanliness and their environmental friendly, the drinking water, sanitation, solid waste management, liquid waste management, etc. We have this 10 billion tsunami tree. We have this Pakistan Climate Change Commission, of which I am a member. It is headed by Prime Minister, but even in the previous government, I think the last meeting of this commission was held around 6-7 years ago, or maybe more, in Umar Asghar Khan's era, I believe, when President Musharraf, I think that was perhaps the last time when its meeting was held. Otherwise, it's extremely high-powered commission. It has chief ministers of all the provinces as member. It has the few other the Minister for Climate Change as member, one person from civil society, one person from private sector. So I theoretically speaking, it's very high-powered commission, but its meeting is never held. So the point I'm trying to make that there are policies in place. Now the actual challenge is how to get those policies rolling. I'll also here like to give you this example of Lahore High Court Climate Change Commission. So Lahore High Court, they asked us, the commission members, uh, to find out the reason why government of Punjab is not able to implement the climate change policy framework. Our major finding was that when we started looking at the commission members, when we started looking at working of government of Punjab, so we came across around 27 departments or ministries which were directly involved to do it. So to begin with, it was Ministry of Environment, then it was Ministry of Forest, Ministry of Wildlife, it was Urban Planning Department, it was Ministry of Irrigation, it was Ministry of Health, it was Finance, it was Planning and VN. So it was 27 in total. And our finding was that most of them, they were doing good work without telling their counterpart that they are doing it in order to implement climate change framework. For example, if you when you're traveling on GT road and if you see some of the mounts prepared by Department of Agriculture, which tells you that wheat harvesting should be done before this date and wheat sowing should be done by this date, etc. Now, the people who are doing it, they don't know that they're doing it because climate change is forcing them, is changing the seasons, harvesting season or sowing season. So simply doing it. So if within province they're not able to connect to each other, then they have to connect to federal government and they have to connect with international donors and lenders and they have to connect with other provincial governments as well. So again, perhaps a lot is being done in silos. Some of the policies, they are being implemented. Some of the policies, they are there in paper, not being implemented. But no one knows, no one has the holistic inventory of what is happening around climate change in Pakistan, partly due to 18th Amendment as well, where the climate change ministry is only an advisory ministry. It has no say on Ministry of Environment in provinces.
Okay, well, there are many other parts of goal 13, but I will go straight to the last one, which is 13B, because that calls for promoting mechanisms for raising capacity for effective climate change related planning and management. And it talks particularly of including women, youth, local and marginalized communities. So we have seen, for example, in the Billion Tree Tsunami, how young people have been engaged quite extensively. Are there other areas in which youth, women, and local communities have been engaged so far in the government's efforts?
Well, perhaps not. I'm a bit skeptic on this goal, and the reason is in the absence of local governments, it is extremely difficult to engage local communities. Yes, youngsters, they are being engaged not only through this Billion Tsunami Tree, but also through this Tiger Force. Also, the universities and colleges, they have their own initiatives. In most of the education institutes now, they have their environmental committees or climate change committees. So awareness is there, youngsters are working, but in the absence of local government everywhere, in Sindh, their tenure is going to expire in a couple of days. In the rest of the Pakistan, we don't have local government at all. Now, these are the goals and these are the indicators which can be achieved at a local level through district governments and district administration. And if we don't have this district government, so federal government sitting in Islamabad, the provincial government sitting in provincial capitals, there is very little that they can do. And I think once and whenever we have local governments in action and empowered and properly financed to work on achieving sustainable development goals, only then perhaps we can claim a victory on this indicator.
Okay, thank you. That's very, very useful because I think many of us have been arguing for years that the local government systems are absolutely crucial if we want to get development down to the grassroots. So thank you for that. I think for young people, it's important to know they are voters, they have a voice, and Pakistan's population is composed largely of very young people. So maybe this is something that they need to articulate by themselves because local governments would absorb their energies as well and set them on a path where they can build upwards. Okay, now there are many, many impacts of climate change that we can expect globally and in Pakistan. Could you speak a little bit about what you think is going to happen to food security and water. The two are linked. How do you see the next, say, 10 or 15 years in these two interrelated sectors?
I'll start with the food security. It is more close to my heart.
Mhm.
Uh, you see, one of the reasons we didn't see social unrest during the peak days of COVID, and I hope peak is already past, that Pakistan, it actually takes care of 90% of its food security requirements
Mm.
domestically. So we don't have to import food. Now, what we are observing that the yield of most of our staple food varieties, it is stagnant now. Looking at the area under cultivation, of course, due to urbanization, due to pressure on land usage, both commercial as well as for residential purposes, the area under cultivation is gradually decreasing, and
Mm.
the yield is stagnant. We never had, we are working on it, but we are not yet able to produce drought-resistant crop varieties. We are not able to produce heat-resistant crop varieties. We are not able to produce the crop varieties which can face and resilient to the heavy winds. So what we observed that every year, the wheat harvesting season, it overlaps with a spell of rains. It overlaps with the spell of windstorms, where most of our produce it get wasted. Similarly, when we look at rice, we despite being a water scarce country, and who knows it better than you, you are the one of the most acclaimed water expert in Pakistan. So rice cultivation in Pakistan is one of the most water intensive uh, techniques in the world. It's 55% water inefficient. So if you look at the water efficiency, wheat is 24% water inefficient, rice is 55% water
Mm.
inefficient. Now, if in East Asia they can grow rice on dry sowing method, in our case, we have to have first seedlings and then we transfer them in the standing water. In East Asia, they grow it directly on dry beds. They don't have to have standing water there. So if they can do it there, I think we need to think of our changing our water practices as well, irrigation practices. But for that, we need to have new sort of varieties. Similarly, sugarcane is even more water intensive than rice. If rest of the world can produce sugar with sugar beets, why do we have to go for this sugar cane? Of course, sugar mills are there and they're quite powerful lobby. But I think we need to think in terms of a concept which is called crop per drop. And we know that one of the effect of climate change is that the availability of drops of water that is very rapidly decreasing. And if it is decreasing, our crop per drop would decrease. So we need to conserve water, make it optimum use of it. And we also need to work on new technologies of agriculture and new varieties of agriculture, which are drought resistant and which are less water required.
So we can see that looking at the link and the nexus between water and food, there is so much more that we have to do. The measures that you're talking about are those that may not happen very easily in the next 10 to 15 years unless we get started now. So there's a lot of urgency in this sector. I'd like you to now comment perhaps on the next part of the nexus. We have in the last 10 years been talking about water, food, and energy nexus. So how do you see the impacts of climate change happening on Pakistan's energy sector?
Well, there are two ways of looking at it. One is
Mhm.
the increased requirement of energy due to climate extreme events. Of course, if there is a more uh, number of hot days, we will have to run our fans and air conditions and everything. If our water table is going down, we need to spend more energy to extract water from the ground. But then we also have to see that water as a major source for energy when we are talking of hydel energy, water as a source for irrigation, for our agriculture, and that is the sector where most of our available water is consumed. And water for food security, the safe and clean drinking water. One can argue that we can have one of the best 5, 7, 8 courses meal in a 5-star hotel. We can pay for it, and then we have a glass of contaminated water. The result would not be food security. The result would be poisoning in most cases. So if we don't have clean drinking water, I'm not talking of safe drinking water. Perhaps we are too far from fulfilling the condition for safe drinking water. But even for clean drinking water, if we don't have clean drinking water, if we don't have clean water to wash our hands for 20 seconds to get ourselves free from COVID virus, which would be part of our lives now. Of course, this food, energy, water nexus in the context of climate change, that would be affecting our lives, and that would be affecting in a many diversified manners than we have thought before arrival of COVID.
Okay, now, Dr. Sam, you know that in our country, we say that we don't have enough research. Or is that the problem? Or are we saying that we do not have enough research relating to this nexus in the context of climate change? And so tell us a little bit. Everybody's moving on to big data use. What are we doing here in Pakistan? Is the government supporting it? And how does SDPI take care of the research gaps?
Well, when we are talking of, I take the research as a knowledge production. When we are talking of knowledge producers in Pakistan, of course, apart from the think tanks and organizations like SDPI and HASAR and many others, we have universities, a high pool of universities. I really feel sad when I see that the hundreds of PhD, thousands of PhDs, which are placed among faculty members at our universities, hundreds and thousands of students, research students, which are enrolled starting from undergrad level to the post-graduation level, when the research doesn't get connected with the policy forums. I think one of the ways where the research policy gap can be better bridged is that policymakers, they should start listening to universities, and universities, they should get out of their self-imposed censorship policy, where because most of them, they get funding from public exchequer. So there is a self-censorship that anything that goes against any criticism, not against any criticism or any identification of any loophole in the government policy would mean betrayal from the state policies. And that's why most of the faculty members and most of the research students, they are discouraged to conduct analytical research. So especially for the climate change, I don't see any dearth of research in universities. Most of them, they have their environment departments, they have their climate change departments, they're producing MScs and PhDs in these disciplines. They are getting funding. I think where we lack that how to bridge the gap between our academia, universities, and with the policymakers. SDPI, in our own capacity, we try to bridge this gap wherever we can. In all the forums where I sit, I always try to have some vice chancellors, some deans or chairs, chairpersons from the university, so that they can provide their academic input. But I think that is one of the loophole. The second is that we still take private sector as one of the polluter, one of the source of problem, whereby in rest of the world now private sector is considered as an equal stakeholder, and unless and until we consider them as part of solution, perhaps we will not be able to move forward, because that's where after government, that's where money is lying in corporate sector. So we need to, I think, have a paradigm shift, start thinking them as part of solution rather than just thinking them as part of problem. Yes, they are creating problem, but so are we. All of us, we are creating problem. Climate change is a human-led disaster, if we have to define it in simple terms. This research gap, knowledge gap, it can be filled in if we can have these three stakeholders feeding to policy forums, private sector, academia, and think tanks, civil society organizations.
Yes, that is indeed the need of the hour. And I'm very particularly taken with the comment you made earlier that very often when we are trying to generate knowledge and we are trying to be rational and we are trying to be objective, sometimes, the stamp you get from the establishment of the powers that be is this is not the right research or not the right topic, or this is something that is against the state. So I think when we are talking about research, we have to get out of this, and all of us have to work together to ensure that we do the research that is needed and connected with practice. So young people, would you like to ask some questions now? और अब अगला सेशन अब हम उर्दू में करेंगे. आप अपने सवाल बताइए. मेरे सामने तो स्क्रीन पे कोई सवाल नहीं आ रहा, या जब तक आप सवाल लिख रहे हैं, चलिए एक सवाल आ गया. ये है, although Pakistan announced as earliest achiever of SDG Goal 13, but there is no framework, milestone or objectives are shared. How do we interpret this? मेरा ख्याल है इसका जवाब डॉक्टर सुलेरी दे चुके हैं, लेकिन अगर आप 2-4 जुमलों में कुछ दोबारा कहना चाहें.
मेरा ख्याल है हमें इसको यूं नहीं समझना चाहिए कि हमने इसको ऑलरेडी अचीव कर लिया. हमें यूं कहना चाहिए कि वी आर ऑन ट्रैक टू अचीव इट. और अगर ये सारी पॉलिसीज और जो सारी चीजें हमने डिस्कस की हैं, अगर ये इम्प्लीमेंट हो जाए तो कोई वजह नहीं कि हम इस गोल को अचीव ना कर सकें. लेकिन राइट नाउ क्लेमिंग विक्ट्री, आई थिंक इट्स स्लाइटली अर्ली.
ओके, तो हम सही रास्ते पे जा रहे हैं और अगले कुछ साल तक करते रहेंगे तो शायद हम कम से कम ये वाला मिल सके. अच्छा, ये एक सवाल आया है, सहर जैदी साहिबा का सवाल है. वो ये पूछ रही हैं कि जो
कोल प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं, 2740 megawatt of coal projects, those have been replaced with the 3700 megawatt of hydro project. वो जो जामिर भाषा डैम जो है उसको और कुछ और हाइडल प्रोजेक्ट्स जो हैं छोटे, उनसे रिप्लेस कर दिया गया है. जो कोल प्रोजेक्ट्स थे अब उनकी तादाद सिर्फ 4 रह गई है पाकिस्तान में जो सीपैक के अंडर लगे थे. पोर्ट कासिम पे है, थरपारकर में है, क्योंकि वहां पे लिग्नाइट है और उसको कहीं पे ट्रांसफर नहीं किया जा सकता. वहां पे लगाना एक मजबूरी थी क्योंकि उस कोल का अदरवाइज कोई मसरफ नहीं था. तो आपके पास टोटल 4 इस वक्त कोल पावर्ड प्लांट्स हैं एंड देयर इज अ कैप ऑन दोस 4 नाउ. उसके बाद अब कोई नया कोल प्रोजेक्ट जो है वो सीपैक में नहीं लगेगा.
ओके, ये बात फैसला हो चुकी है कि अब आइंदा से और कोई नया प्रोजेक्ट कोयला निकालने का नहीं होगा. ओके
जी, कोयले से बिजली बनाने का नहीं होगा.
अच्छी खबर है. अभी तक तो हम तेल इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं. सॉरी
जी, कोयले से बिजली बनाने का कोई नया प्रोजेक्ट नहीं होगा. तो जो साहिवाल, पोर्ट कासिम, थरपारकर, तो इनके बाद अब आपको कोयले का कोई नया प्रोजेक्ट नहीं मिलेगा पाकिस्तान.
ओके, एक और सवाल है, गालिबन आप पढ़ सकते हैं इसको स्क्रीन पे.
जी, ग्रीन गोल इन इट्स एंटायरिटी. जी नहीं, अभी हमें
आप जवाब दे चुके हैं वैसे. चलें भाई, मेरा ख्याल है नौजवानों, ये बात तो हमारी समझ में आ गई है ना कि ग्रीन गोल अभी नहीं हुआ है, अभी हमें बहुत कुछ उसमें करने की जरूरत है, लेकिन हम सही रास्ते पर हैं. ओके, एक और सवाल आ गया है मदिहा सुमरो साहिबा का.
देखिए, जब हम बात
रेंज ऑफ एक्शंस एंड गोल्स दैट नीड टू बी कंप्लीटेड. हाँ
जी, जब बात करते हैं और जैसा कि सीमी ने अपने सवाल में बताया भी था आपको कि इसके 5 इंडिकेटर्स हैं. आप इसको वेब पे भी देख सकते हैं. तो एक तो ये है कि डिजास्टर रिलेटेड जो है कैपेसिटीज उनको स्ट्रेंथन करना. दूसरा है हमारी अपनी जो इंटीग्रेशन है क्लाइमेट चेंज पॉलिसीज और प्लानिंग, उसको इंटीग्रेट करना. तीसरा जो है वो ह्यूमन कैपेसिटी को बिल्ड करना. चौथा जो है जिसपे कि इंटरनेशनल कम्युनिटी और डेवलप्ड वर्ल्ड जो है वो हमें मायूस कर रहा है, वो ये है कि 2020 जिसमें हम बैठे हैं, अभी तक हमारे पास $100 बिलियन जो है उसके ग्रीन क्लाइमेट फंड में हो जाने चाहिए थे, जिनसे अभी बहुत पीछे हैं हम. मुश्किल से अभी $10 बिलियन जो है वो फिगर भी आपका अचीव नहीं हुआ. और जो आखिरी इसमें है वो ये है कि ऐसे मैकेनिज्म्स बनाना जिसमें कि प्लानिंग और मॉनिटरिंग जो है वो आसान हो सके. जब हम मॉनिटरिंग की बात करते हैं तो उसमें डाटा कलेक्शन जो है वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होती है. आपकी बेस लाइन बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट होती है. बेस लाइन पे हम बहुत पीछे हैं. अभी तक हमारे पास जंगलात की एक यूनिफाइड डेफिनेशन नहीं है. तो जो केपी हुकूमत है वो कहती है कि जंगल से मुराद है एरिया अंडर कंट्रोल ऑफ एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव कंट्रोल ऑफ फॉरेस्ट। जब पंजाब का जंगलों का डाटा दिया जाता है तो उसमें फार्म फॉरेस्ट्री भी शामिल है, खेतों में जितने दरख्त होते हैं वो भी जंगलों में गिने जाते हैं। जब सिंध गवर्नमेंट अपना फॉरेस्ट का डाटा देती है तो उसमें मैंग्रोव्स वो शामिल होते हैं, समुद्र के किनारे जो है वो सारे जंगल होते हैं। बलूचिस्तान गवर्नमेंट है वो श्रब्स और बुशेस उनको भी वो जंगलात में गिनती है। अब देखिए, जब आपके पास एक स्टैंडर्ड नहीं होगा डेफिनेशन का, और ये 4 मुख्तलिफ किस्म की डेफिनेशंस 4 सूबों से आके, और फिर उनको जब आप पाकिस्तान का फॉरेस्ट डाटा लेके जाएंगे तो बाज़ औक़ात वो जब हम कहते हैं कि अच्छा जी ये नंबर बड़ा मज़ा का खेज लग रहा है, तो वो इसीलिए लग रहा होता है कि चूंकि उनकी स्टैंडर्ड डेफिनेशन नहीं है। और ये सिर्फ फॉरेस्ट नहीं, बहुत से और इंडिकेटर्स भी हैं यहाँ पे के डेफिनेशन स्टैंडर्ड नहीं है। जब आपके पास बेस लाइन नहीं होगी तो फिर जो भी आप डाटा इकट्ठा करेंगे वो उस पर हमें इसी तरह के डाउट्स आ रहे होंगे।
और कोई सवाल? ओके, ये कह रहे हैं कि जो हमारी फेडरल और सूबाई हुकूमतें हैं उनमें क्योंकि आपस में कोऑर्डिनेशन नहीं होता,
जी
तो
बिल्कुल, जैसा मैंने मिसाल दी थी लाहौर
हाँ
हाई कोर्ट
उसका बताइए जी।
जो लाहौर हाई कोर्ट
जी
कमीशन की मैंने मिसाल दी थी कि अगर 27-28 आप किसी भी उसको गोल को देख लें ना, और फिर आप देखें कि जो उसके लिए कौन कौन सी डिपार्टमेंट्स और मिनिस्ट्रीज जो हैं वो इन्वॉल्व होती हैं, तो आप अपनी एक लिस्ट खुद बना के देखें हर गोल के अगेंस्ट, तो आपको पता चलेगा कि कोई भी ऐसा, क्योंकि इट्स ऑल इंटीग्रेटेड, यू कांट अचीव देम इन साइलोज, तो कोई एक मिनिस्ट्री या कोई एक डिपार्टमेंट इनको अचीव नहीं कर सकता। तो पहले तो एट प्रोविंशियल लेवल कोऑर्डिनेशन, फिर प्रोविंसेस और डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स की आपस में कोऑर्डिनेशन, फिर प्रोविंसेस की फेडरल गवर्नमेंट से कोऑर्डिनेशन, फिर फेडरल गवर्नमेंट की इंटरनेशनल लैंडर्स और इंटरनेशनल मल्टीलैटरल एजेंसी से कोऑर्डिनेशन। तो इट्स ऑल अबाउट कोऑर्डिनेशन एंड इट्स ऑल अबाउट अचीविंग देम इन अ होलिस्टिक मैनर। तो उसका ना होना जो है वो डेफिनेटली एक सेटबैक है हमारे लिए।
अच्छा, अब यहाँ पे नेशनल डिजास्टर रिस्क रिडक्शन के बारे में पूछा जा रहा है, खासतौर पे सेंदाई फ्रेमवर्क।
देखिए
जी डॉक्टर साहब।
इसमें जो जैसे कि मैंने बात की थी कि जो एनडीएमए का रोल है वो तो उसको एक्नॉलेज किया जाता है, लेकिन सेंडाई फ्रेमवर्क को भी देखें तो उसमें भी लोकल कम्युनिटीज और लोकल लेवल पे जो रेजिलियंस है वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है। तो थ्योरेटिकली स्पीकिंग एनडीएमए के बाद पीडीएमए है, प्रोविंशियल डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट अथॉरिटीज, और पीडीएमए के बाद डीडीएमए है, डिस्ट्रिक्ट डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट अथॉरिटी, where we are lacking right now both in capacities as well as in terms of finances and in terms of empowerment, that is DDMA। तो जब तक आपके पास स्ट्रॉन्ग डीडीएमए नहीं होगा, एनडीएमए हर जगह पे जाके, यानी एनडीएमए जो है वो थरपारकर में जाके भी लोकस मारे, एनडीएमए जो है वो बलूचिस्तान में जाके भी लोकस का खात्मा कर रही हो, एनडीएमए जो है वो थल में जाके भी लोकस को मार रही हो, तो एनडीएमए के बस से बाहर हो जाएगा। वी आर ओवर स्ट्रेचिंग एनडीएमए। उसके लिए हमारे पास फंक्शनल एम्पावर्ड जो है वो डीडीएमए होना चाहिए, डिस्ट्रिक्ट डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट अथॉरिटीज, जो कि सारे काम करें, और अगर उनको फिर जरूरत पड़े तो पीडीएमए को बुलाएं, पीडीएमए को जरूरत पड़े तो वो एनडीएमए को बुलाएं। हम अनफॉर्चुनेटली रिवर्स साइकिल में जा रहे हैं, और जब तक वो रिवर्स साइकिल रहेगा, मुझे डर ये है कि एक दिन ऐसा आएगा जबकि एनडीएमए की कैपेसिटी जो है वो शायद ओवर स्ट्रेच हो जाएगी। अल्लाह ना करे अगर कोई 2-3 मल्टीपल डिजास्टर इस वक्त पाकिस्तान में आ जाते हैं, कोविड है, कोविड के साथ इस वक्त कराची के ड्रेन साफ हो रहे हैं, लोकस को मारा जा रहा है, और खुदा न खास्ता अगर फ्लड्स आ जाए तो फिर एनडीएमए क्या करेगा? जाहिर है कि एनडीएमए के पास एक लिमिट है ह्यूमन रिसोर्सेज की, फाइनेंसेस की, बाकी चीजों की, तो थोड़ा सा हमें इससे आगे बढ़ना होगा। एनडीएमए को जो एक एडवांटेज है यंगस्टर्स को मैं बता दूं कि इमरजेंसी के लिए वो पेपरा रूल्स को बाईपास करते हुए दे कैन डू प्रोक्योरमेंट, दैट इज द बिगेस्ट एडवांटेज दैट एनडीएमए हैज। अदरवाइज सरकार में खरीदारी करना, सरकार में हायरिंग करना बहुत मुश्किल काम होता है। किसी भी सीट को फिल करने के लिए या कोई चीज खरीदने के लिए महीनों का प्रोसेस होता है, अदरवाइज नैब जो है वो सर पे पड़ जाती है। एनडीएमए के पास चूंकि इसने डिजास्टर को मैनेज करना होता है, इसके पास ये लीवरेज है कि अगर इसको भर्ती करने हैं लोग तो ये कर सकती है, अगर इसको खरीदारी करनी है तो ये कर सकती है, उस पर पेपरा रूल नहीं लगेंगे। और यही वजह है कि बहुत से महकमे भी जो हैं वो एनडीएमए पे रिलाई करते हैं।
सवाल ही
अभी जब लोग जी
इस वक्त हम देख रहे हैं, जैसा भी आपने कहा कि वो एनडीएमए लगता है हर जगह छाई हुई है, और जैसे वो कराची की भरसना करें, लेकिन वो काम तो एक डिजास्टर एजेंसी का नहीं होना चाहिए ना। और वो कुछ काम ऐसे हैं जिसमें इस वक्त एनडीए में पड़ रहे हैं, जो कि वो काम है जो आमतौर पे होने चाहिए। और फिर ये है कि पहले हम बात कर रहे थे लोकल गवर्नमेंट की, कि भाई वहां तक तो पहुंचना जरूरी है ना, ग्रास रूट पे कौन से इदारे हैं, क्योंकि जब मसले मसाइल होते हैं और जब डिजास्टर पहले आता है तो वो तो ग्रास रूट्स पे आते हैं ना, मकामी लोगों के लिए मसाइल पैदा होते हैं। तो मुकामी तंजीमें कौन सी हैं, वो शहरी तंजीमें कौन सी हैं, तो वो उसका बड़ा फुकदान है हमारे मुल्क में। और हमें सोचना पड़ेगा, जब बातें हो रही थी कि कैसे तो कुलशन अगर आप देखें बिल्कुल बैनुल-अक़वामी सतह तक होगा तो तब बात बनेगी। और हमारे मुल्क में ये है कि एक हम बैनुल-अक़वामी सतह की बात करते हैं, फिर हम फेडरल लेवल की बात करते हैं, फिर प्रोविंशियल और फिर सब भूल जाए उसके बाद। और अब जो हमारा फेडरल सेटअप है और जो हमारा सूबाई सेटअप है, काफी खिंचाव है इस वक्त। तो बहुत सारे काम जो हैं वो सियासत की नजर हो रहे हैं। और जब हम क्लाइमेट चेंज की बात कर रहे हैं तो उस पर हमें सियासत से हट के सोचना पड़ेगा। पानी, ग़िज़ा, ट्रांसपोर्ट, ये सारे वो मसाइल हैं जो आम शहरी की जिंदगी पे असरअंदाज होते हैं। तो बहुत जरूरी है कि इसको सियासत से बाहर रखा जाए। खैर, ये शायद एक और सेशन का हिस्सा बन सकता है। तो मैं पूछना चाह रही हूँ, और कोई सवाल है आपकी तरफ से? कोई सवाल है? अच्छा, जब तक आप दूसरे सवाल सोचें तो मेरे जहन में एक सवाल आ रहा था कि ये सीपीईसी का आजकल बहुत चर्चा है, ठीक है? और कुछ लोग ये कहते हैं कि जिस किस्म के हम प्रोग्राम इस वक्त सीपीईसी के सीपैक के तहत कर रहे हैं, तो उसमें तो कार्बन एमिशंस भी बढ़ जाएंगे। और क्या ख्याल है आपका, क्या ये दुरुस्त है? क्या ये ऐसा
देखिए
ख्याल जो कुछ लोगों का है वो दुरुस्त है?
देखिए, अगर आप पाकिस्तान की चाइना के साथ अभी तक की एंगेजमेंट देखें सीपैक की, तो चाइना जो है वो डिमांड ड्रिवन है, वो सप्लाई ड्रिवन नहीं है। आप चाइना से मांगेंगे कोल पावर प्लांट, वो कोल पावर प्लांट लेके आ जाएंगे। आप उनसे मांगेंगे सोलर प्लांट्स, वो सोलर एनर्जी प्लांट लेके आ जाएंगे। आप उनसे कहेंगे सड़कें बनानी है, वो सड़कें लेके आ जाएंगे। आप उनसे कहेंगे पोर्ट बनाना है, वो पोर्ट लेके आ जाएंगे। बेसिकली उन्होंने लोन सेल करना है। चाइना इज अ गुड फ्रेंड, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ पाकिस्तान एंड गवर्नमेंट ऑफ चाइना, दे आर स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनर्स। बट व्हेन इट कम्स टू प्राइवेट सेक्टर का मोटिव जो होता है हर जगह वो प्रॉफिट होता है। और चाइना के पास इस वक्त ये कंपेटिटिव एडवांटेज है कि आप उनसे जो चीज भी मांगेंगे उनके प्राइवेट सेक्टर के पास वो चीज मौजूद होगी। तो ये हम पे है, हम किस तरह से नेगोशिएट करते हैं। जैसे हुकूमत ने कोल बेस्ड पावर प्लांट पे एक कैप लगा के उसकी जगह हाइडल पे ले लिया, तो वो जो लोन कोल बेस्ड पावर प्लांट के लिए था वो हाइडल की तरफ शिफ्ट हो गया। अब कल अगर हुकूमत नेगोशिएट करती है कि नहीं, हमें हाइडल नहीं चाहिए, हमें सोलर चाहिए, हमें विंड चाहिए, तो वो लोन उधर शिफ्ट हो जाएगा। तो हमारी जब तक अपनी तैयारी नहीं होगी, मेरा ख्याल है इसके लिए मेजर कल्प्रिट जो है वो शायद चाइना उतना नहीं होगा या सीपेक उतना नहीं है जितने कि हम खुद हैं। कि अगर हमारी अपनी होमवर्क कंप्लीट नहीं है तो हम वही मांगेंगे जिस चीज का हमें पता है, और जो चीज हम मांगेंगे चाइना वुड बी हैप्पी टू सेल इट। जब हम किसी भी शॉप पे जाते हैं और उनसे कहते हैं कि जी फलां चीज हमें दे दें, तो शॉपकीपर को तो वो चीज बेचनी है, वो कभी भी आपको ये नहीं कहेगा कि जी आप ये मत लें, आप ये लेके जाएं, ये एनवायरमेंट फ्रेंडली है। वो तभी होगा अगर उसके पास वो चीज ना हो। अगर उसके पास वो चीज है तो वो तो बेचेगा। तो सीपेक भी
ओके,
तकरीबन ऐसा ही है।
ठीक है। तो ये हेलो,
जी जी।
ओके, आपकी आवाज़ थोड़ी-सी कट गई थी आबिद, लेकिन अब मेरा ख़्याल है ठीक हो गई है। सो आबिद, आपका बहुत शुक्रिया। आपने बहुत अच्छे से हम सबको समझाया कि इस वक़्त जब हम कहते हैं कि हमें ग्रीन बार मिल गया, उसका क्या मतलब है और आगे भी कितना और काम करना है। और ख़ास तौर पे फूड, वाटर और एनर्जी नेक्सस के बारे में भी आपने बहुत तफ़सील से बताया। तो आपका बहुत शुक्रिया। मेरा ख्याल है कि हमारे नौजवान जो इस प्रोग्राम को सुन रहे हैं और देख रहे हैं, हमारे नाजरीन और सामीन, उन्होंने बहुत कुछ सीखा है। मैं आपका दोबारा बहुत शुक्रिया अदा करती हूँ, इस उम्मीद के साथ कि ये इस किस्म की बातचीत हमारी चलती रहेगी और हम आपसे सीखते रहेंगे। बहुत आपका शुक्रिया डॉक्टर सुलेरी।
प्लेयर इज माइन, थैंक यू।
खुदा हाफिज, खुदा हाफिज। सो सामीन, आज का हमारा सेशन खत्म।